Hi everyone, my name is Greg Slozik, and I'm completing Module 1 for EDL 850 School of Law. I currently am the Theory of Knowledge Coordinator and Head of Basketball at Chadwick International School, which is located in Songdo, South Korea. I also work for the International Baccalaureate Organization as an examiner for Theory of Knowledge and History, as well as an educational consultant for the IBO. A little bit about my background. I'm actually originally from upstate New York. I have a non-traditional route towards my professional career. I played 3 years of collegiate basketball, Division III in upstate New York, and my last year I got injured, and I actually decided to join the Navy. I was an electrical engineer aboard a hovercraft for 4 years, and I was stationed in Little Creek, Virginia, and did a deployment to the Mediterranean back in 1999 and 2000. Um, After that, I got out of the Navy, went back and got my bachelor's in history, and got a job teaching at a junior high school outside of Syracuse, New York. During that time, I got my master's in secondary education from the State University of New York in Oswego. And upon that, I decided to travel a little bit, and I've been overseas ever since. 15 years in international teaching, which has seen stops in Thailand, Dubai, and the United Arab Emirates. I recently just did 4 years as diploma program coordinator at Kaohsiung American School in Taiwan, and now this is year 3 in South Korea. My current work and professional goals, again, this is year 3 at Chadwick International. Currently, I'm developing and supervising the DP Core curriculum, which includes Theory of Knowledge, the Extended Essay, and CAS. I'm also developing and supervising a curriculum for 7 through 12 boys and girls at our school, and I'm the varsity boys basketball coach. Also working to incorporating the IBO's approaches to teaching and learning into the taught curriculum. Continuing to be an examiner for the IBO. And my professional goals are to hopefully continue to grow as a pedagogical leader and someday be either a principal or head of school for an IB World School. So this module is about the role of the federal government in public education. As I've kind of outlined before, I'm a bit out of my element here because I haven't worked in public education for over 15 years. So although I have a degree in history, I will try to make this as contemporary as possible and try to show my understanding of what is for me a bit of I'm a bit of a novice on this subject. So what kinds of support do public schools receive from the following levels of government? So we'll start at the base and work our way up to structure and superstructure. So at the base, the local level, public schools receive funding from local property taxes. So the level of support can be greatly influenced by the proportion of the tax base that the community gets. Governance of the school is done democratically via local school boards, who I believe are responsible for hiring and firing in most cases. Again, local level responsible for building internal capacity, for identifying personnel and placing them in the correct place to hopefully be able to meet and exceed student outcomes. State Department of Education, depending on the state, but from the Center of Public Justice stated that funding from the state comes to approximately half of what schools get will come from the states. States can set learning standards and benchmarks, so they can set laws on governments, but depending on the state, the level of involvement may vary. It seems that there has been a trend for some states to devolve their power to the local level. But again, I think that this varies state by state because this is a federalist governance structure. Federal government roughly 10% of school funding comes from federal aid. Um, Overarching large-scale policies like No Child Left Behind and the ESSA are example of superstructural regulations which states can adopt or not. I say that they can or not. Funding will, I believe, be withheld if certain aspects of large superstructural regulations are not implemented. Again, many of the articles took a look at the relationship between the 10th and the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment was passed in the 1960s. It was part of the Equal Protection Clause that did away with separate but equal. So again, at the federal level, depending on which branch of government you're talking about, the support will vary, whether it's the judicial, legislative, or executive branch. The Department of Education collects and analyzes data and makes recommendations about, again, different types of overarching policy. And again, the federal government, in many of the articles that I read, it seems as though there's a bit of a paradox between how different constitutional scholars interpret the 10th and 14th Amendments. Again, roles and responsibilities at the local level. The school board appoints superintendents, allocates funding from local tax revenues. The superintendent or the CEO will be charged with hiring and firing, district-wide compliance with regard to laws and regulations, and then building administrators are overseeing local operations, building internal capacity, and managing local school budgets. The state, again, allocating about 50% of the funds come from the states. They set standards and decide on level of compliance with regard to federal laws. And in some cases, they devolve power to local districts. The federal, again, allocating 8% of the funding that goes to schools comes from the Department of Education. The judicial branch and legislative branches both have distinct functions with regard to their involvement in education. So, standard component 6, the final question was looking at where each component would fit within the hierarchy of local, state, and federal. And so component 6.1, program completers understand and demonstrate the capacity to evaluate, develop, and implement management, communication technology, school level governance, and operation systems that support each student's learning needs and promote the mission and vision of the school. Reading into that, it seems like that is very much a local building level. Component 6.2, program completers understand and demonstrate the capacity to evaluate, develop, and advocate for data-informed and equitable resource planning that supports school improvement and student development. Again, I see that as being very much within the domain of the local. And then the component 6.3, program completers understand and demonstrate the capacity to reflectively evaluate, communicate about, and implement laws, rights, policies, and regulations to promote student and adult success and well-being. I would see that most of the time being within the realm of the state, but in some instances, again, if you're talking about judicial review or executive policy, like there could be instances when the reach of the federal government could affect component 6.3. And those are my references. And thank you very much for watching.